welcome to Verdictum. I am Ananya Singh, and today we are going to discuss the connection between judiciary, social media, and legal journalism in today's day and age. And for that, we have with us Advocate Amish Aggarwala. If you use social media, you probably already know him. He's an advocate on record at the Supreme Court of India and has been a central government counsel, along with being a litigator at the highest court in the nation. He also makes legal content for social media and has a great number of following on Instagram and YouTube. Welcome to Verdictum, sir.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome, Ananya. And thank you to Verdictum as well for hosting this.
So, my first question to you would be, how did your litigation as well as your social media journey begin?
So social media, is the funniest thing. I tell people that when I started my Instagram account, it was literally just for friends and family. And I was watching Breaking Bad around that time. Not even, not even the show Better Call Saul. But around that time, with the show, and the reference to Saul Goodman, I thought it would be funny to have Better Call Amish as a username, which was for the longest time only there for friends, family, barely 200 or so followers. But you know, in the past couple of years, because I just kept randomly posting about law and other stuff on my Instagram, people joke that that has kind of become my brand, and perhaps I should even name my firm Better Call Amish, or some such sort. But I've been posting about legal issues, legal awareness, legal education for about I think since 2000 July of 2019, if memory serves me right. So that would make it about I think 3.5 years now, I guess. And there have been ups and downs, but overall it's been very, very fulfilling in terms of recognition, appreciation, and many more small hidden benefits, uh, such as a lot of times I have young advocates and young law students come up to me and say that they've watched my content, and I tell them that I am I am you know uh, I am so grateful for them coming out and reaching out to me like this. And I exchange contact information with almost every single such lawyer and law student, because I tell them this, that a huge chunk of my, up-to-date knowledge comes from my interactions with these young lawyers and law students. And there have been so many occasions where people who have come to me because of my content have helped me out with my legal queries, because these people were there as experts in their own subject matter domains. In many situations where I have no clue about this particular subject matter. So, many adventures, many crazy experiences, and it's been it's been very rewarding to be there on social media and talking about the work that I do.
Wow. So, since you are an established litigator as well, how do you manage your time between social media and litigation?
So, Ananya, it's been a huge concern since forever. There have been many slow days in litigation where I was able to take out my phone camera and start recording. But there have been very, very busy days. I remember there was this one time I was juggling between work and family commitments. I had some relatives who had I think someone was getting married. I was running around, and every single moment of my day, from when I woke up to when I went to sleep, was spent in either hearings or client discussions or these family gatherings. But there were a couple of very interesting things happening around that time, which I wanted to talk about on social media. And you know, in those moments, I there was this one time I literally, while driving my car, something which I wouldn't really recommend, while driving my car, I just on the same thing, the mobile holder. I kept my phone. I was not looking at the phone. I was driving and my eyes on the road. But for, I believe, 12 minutes straight, I kept talking and I hoped that it's going to turn out fine. And whatever the quality of the video, the audio quality was, I just threw it out there in the internet. And so it is very difficult, right? Like sometimes, and there have been many days where because of work or travel or family commitments of any sort, I I forget to post. I'm not able to post, and I feel horrible about it. But then there have been good days where, or days of far more inspiration, where I've been pumping out content left, right, center, and it's just it's been good.
Right. Uh, you are making legal content for a very long time, as you said, since 2019. And now
Hmm.
there's, a lot of other people are also doing it. So due to there being access to the legal content, do you think there is a significant rise in the awareness that people have now?
Um, so there are, pros and cons to this. Um, there are pros and cons to this. So what happens is that um, a lot of people have gained a lot of knowledge. I believe they're much more aware of their rights, and it's a wonderful thing. Rather than being taken for a ride, being aware of your rights is a great thing. But when you ask this question, one thing that really kind of irks me and bothers me and concerns me is a lot of times, sad to say, some of these people who are talking about the law, they don't really go into the practical nuances of dealing with a particular situation. So they'll say you have right under XYZ law.
Hmm.
And I've seen this happen where people say that, oh, I read this somewhere or I saw this somewhere, and they try to kind of figure out their way, or maybe just follow the advice. But the reality is very different when it comes to practical implementation, or practically how these things are dealt with. I'd say, for example, a lot of people say that if the police do this, you should know your right, and you have a right under blah blah section. But you don't understand what will actually happen when you go up to a cop and you say these things. you
Right.
know I mean, from experience, I can tell you, you try to say these things to a cop, and if you're not a lawyer and you're just some kid out of college, I've seen
Hmm.
so many kids talk about this. They get slapped, they get picked up, unnecessary, a lot of. So it's like, when there's no proper context, and there are thousands of such examples, right? Thousands of such examples, because of which it's a little bit of a concern as well. People, just yesterday, I was watching some video by an advocate, talking about punishment for adultery under the Indian Penal Code. And the poor fellow did not know that the offense has been decriminalized by the Honorable Supreme Court some 4, 5, 6 years ago. So
Right.
there are a lot of challenges which are there. So there are a lot of, I mean, it's great, but it has its own concerns. I would say that on any given day, it's still better to reach out to a lawyer,
Hmm.
and especially on fact to fact, case to case situation, do take advice rather than just venturing out, or doing things thinking that this is the particular way that things are supposed to be done.
Right. Uh, so, we see that there's a lot of information available in the field of medicine and about diseases that has helped tremendously to the society. And people now go and search medicines and treatments on these websites. But in that field, changes are not rapid. Medicines stay for long till new invention is made, and two opinions are hardly seen. Considering the entire different gamut of the legal field, where there are different high courts, same high courts taking different stand when the matter is referred to a division bench, law amendments that take place, what challenges are there while giving legal advice, and how do you cope with this issue?
Ananya, I think your voice cracked up a little in the middle. You'll have to repeat your question. I'm so sorry.
Okay. I was saying that in the field of medicine, there's a lot of websites on which people go and search treatments, and but medicines, they stay for long. New inventions are hardly made in that field, and two opinions are hardly seen. What the question was is ki, considering the entire different gamut of the legal field, where there are different high courts, same high courts taking different stand when the matter is referred to division bench, law amendments taking place. What challenges are there while giving a legal advice, and how do you cope with this issue?
First of all, I must mention this, Ananya. The fields of medicine also is so ever evolving that medical advice given today will not hold true tomorrow. There are thousands of innovations happening. Doctors and people in medical research giving stating that we were absolutely wrong about this ABC thing or XYZ thing all the time. Having said that, the question for me in terms of giving legal advice to people in different with law pertaining to different states and different procedures, one thing of course is laws passed by the central government, laws passed by the parliament, right, and enforced by central government and its agencies, they pretty much tend to remain the same. So if a matter is being dealt with by the police under the IPC, or maybe specialized agencies such as the Enforcement Directorate, CBI, or maybe in any other realm, you know, uh, things are very, very similar in many contexts. India not being so federal in nature that you've got autonomy. India being to a certain extent, I would say, federal in nature, that
Hmm.
there is a little bit of uniformity across the land. However, there are uh, there are variations with state amendments, right, passed by the various state legislatures, and there is also to a huge extent procedural differences. There, I say that this is the reason why giving legal advice to anybody, whenever I do that, I always say that you know you need to also get a confirmation from a local lawyer about this particular thing. I was recently observing proceedings in Karnataka High Court at Bangalore,
Hmm.
and there was smallest of things. Someone told me that so in Delhi High Court, what we do is if a matter is being adjourned for a long date, if the judge has perhaps not taken up the matter, the date is being given by the court master, and then we have to subsequently move an early hearing application. And there is no other way if you want to get an early hearing in the matter. Here, Karnataka High Court, they said we move an application under the CRPC, the adjournment application. I don't remember which section it was, but that section says that there may not be more than some XYZ adjournment, something like that. Completely redundant. At least in Delhi, we don't use that section at all. But these people in Karnataka High Court, they say that if a date is being given and we want a shorter date, what we do is we move an application for adjournment. And we don't want an adjournment. We actually want the hearing to be to come up at the earliest. They say we move an adjournment application, and in that adjournment application, this very same day, and in that adjournment application, a short date is given by the court staff. So these are very small things that only the local lawyer will be able to tell you. The person practicing in the area having jurisdiction over the issue which you have with you. Having said that, um, outsider perspective also helps a lot. So, in that same Karnataka High Court, proceedings which were going on, these lawyers I was discussing with, one of these guys mentioned that that in a particular case they were trying to get permanent exemption from appearance for the accused person in a trial which was taking place. And I mentioned to these gentlemen that there is a Supreme Court judgment on this. I believe there's one CBI versus some Dalmia judgment, which is there, which talks about how if you give the certain few, four, five undertakings to the court, you will be able to, you'll be able to get permanent. I mean, the court says that ideally the trial court should give um, permanent exemption from appearance to the accused person. So, that is something that is universal across the country because the Supreme Court mandates it. But, in that city where lawyers haven't really kind of gotten around to using that particular strategy, it's
Hmm.
something that they haven't really thought about, something which happens quite often in the city of New Delhi. So outside perspective helps. When people reach out to me, I give them certain guiding points, certain principles, uh, having to a certain extent universal applicability in the kind of situation that they are in, and then execution, and then molding it in the requirement of the local area is something
Hmm.
that local lawyers can do. So that's something that we do as lawyers. Having said that, to a huge extent, when you talk about Indian laws, even laws abroad, your training as a lawyer, your ability of dealing with situations, your understanding of basic fundamental foundational concepts of law, and how the parliament would also want to pass legislation. That is something that you will see, common law system across the world. A lot of principles are very, very similar, right? There are penal provisions, there are procedural provisions to enforce those penal provisions. There are, civil disputes. How do you govern them? So there's a lot of similarities, a lot of foundational jurisprudence that if you're able to understand as a lawyer, I think you just need to like mold your thing and mold it a little, that education, and you should be able to practice law pretty much anywhere in the world with just a couple of 100 hours of extra effort put in.
Wow. So my takeaway from that is you can touch on the basics when you are making content about you are giving legal advice online. But for the basics, for the intricacies, you have to approach a lawyer in person.
Absolutely. Like even if, you are, say, for example, if a doctor is making content, if they cannot make a general assumption and say, okay, if you have a mole on your skin, it definitely is skin cancer. There's always context behind it. So as a content creator in the professional sphere, you always use words such as um, may, right? It may be this, it may be that, right? Not just in terms of kind of safeguarding yourself in terms of any problems, but also also kind of explaining to the person that there may be other situations, other factors which may change the perspective of the the person giving the answer. Another thing is that as a professional, what I have seen helps, like, kind of works for me, uh, is that a lot of times I talk about situations that have arisen in front of me. So I'm not talking about general concepts of law or general how-tos, right? I'm trying to explain, and I'm trying to give my experience, give my knowledge to others by talking about what transpired in my cases or in cases that I saw in front of me. The law may be different. In another state, things could be different. But at least in my state, in my city, the capital of the country, this is how things transpire. But a lot of times, there are a lot of similarities, and people are able to get a decent amount of benefits,
Hmm.
decent amount of benefit by understanding these concepts.
So my next question would be a little bit related to that. Where should one draw a line when talking about a pending case or a case which one may be involved as a lawyer on a social media platform or to media in general? And how do you deal with that aspect?
So, it's a huge problem for me also, Ananya. There are a lot of occasions where I want to talk about some fantastic developments in an ongoing case, but because there are many concerns, um, sometimes strategies must be undertaken for your client. Sometimes law must be molded a little, the interpretation of the law must be molded a little. These are things you cannot talk about on the internet, especially when you've got opponents also.
Yeah.
Sometimes being on the lookout for what is transpiring, what your lawyer is talking about. So there have been many occasions where I have not been able to talk about anything for the longest of times. But when the dispute does get resolved one way or the other, or we've had some substantial, irreversible progress, those are the times when you talk about your case. You have to exercise a lot of self-restraint. If there is someone, perhaps a young lawyer or a law student, who wonders that if I cannot talk about the things that are going on in court daily in my matters right now, how am I supposed to talk about any content, or how am I supposed to put out any content? For to those people, I would say talk about what you are witnessing going on in courts. So you cannot talk about your own cases, but you can always say that in this particular, when I went to court today, this is what I saw happening. And these are some of the lessons that we can extract from witnessing these incidents. So I think there's no shortage of things to talk about. And of course, another tool that I kind of resort to from time to time is molding the facts of my situation to a certain extent that nobody can use it against me or my client. That is something that I'm very, very particular about. But but uh, I have till now, there's not been any sort of issue in terms of me disclosing something or me talking about something and that uh, having become a problem for a client. Till now, nothing like that, but you never know. Mistakes always to be made.
Right. So another thing would be related to the extent of the social media content that is available. So there's a report, according to the India Justice Report of 2019, only 15 million out of the 1 billion eligible Indians were provided legal aid services in the last 14 years. Do you think this problem is to some extent resolved when free of cost content is available to a person?
So we talked about it just a few minutes prior as well, right? Uh, the legal content out there is fantastic. Legal aid being available to the general citizens of the country, especially those who are eligible for the same, they are also very, very beneficial. Our country is one where we do believe that, and it's not just on paper, but I believe in practicality also, access to justice is something which is which the courts, the legislature, everybody endeavors to provide. Honestly, I'm not sure about how things are at the grassroots level. What goes on in small towns and villages, to what extent are people put to trouble if they want to avail of free legal aid? I have no idea. Um, But at least when it comes to Delhi NCR region, I have seen to like people avail of legal aid and they've had fantastic results. Even councils on legal aid panels do very, very good work. Otherwise, they risk being kicked off the panel. So access to justice, I say, by legal aid, associations, that is one. Uh, But apart from that, say access to justice by legal content, I think that legal content creators are able to give a little nudge to the general public in a certain direction. But to think that armed with knowledge given by Mr. ABC, I will be able to fight my case or tackle my situation is very, very far-fetched, at least for now. Perhaps I can imagine in the future a situation where um, end-to-end guidance on every step of the way, including dealing with contingencies, is something that someone could perhaps provide in the future. But then again, it's also a very, very insurmountable task. It's like saying that once I learn how to do um, kidney stone removal surgery, I'll be able to perform it upon myself or maybe upon a relative. The chances are very, very unlikely. Yeah.
Would you also agree that the same would also apply to the artificial intelligence doing the legal aid for public?
Mm, I think artificial intelligence does have to a huge extent scope in the justice system. I think if there are parameters which are created. Of course, there is a lot of discretion also, but in many, many circumstances, I mean, I would bet that some crazy coder will be able to generate. No, I don't think it's there today, but in the very near future, someone will be able to program a software to look at past judgments, look at facts, pull out common uh, common ingredients in those facts, look at what judgments have been passed in the past,
Hmm.
and accordingly pass judgments in the future. That is something which I believe AI can do. One thing I believe AI, at least in my kind of understanding of it, I don't think it will be possible for AI, would be to feel the common human collective consciousness, which to a little extent dictates what kind of laws need to be passed, how those laws need to be implemented. The legislature the executive and the judiciary as well, when it comes to laws, regulations, and enforcement of those laws and regulations, we always keep a finger on the pulse of society. What, and if there is a requirement for a different law or a different interpretation, to a decent extent, we are quick to respond. The bigger the pain of the society, the swifter the response as well. But I do not see artificial intelligence being able to do that particular thing. I believe AI can look into the past to give conclusive answers for the future, but evolving human consciousness is something that I don't think, at least today, AI will be able to deal with or to take into account while passing judgments. And even by that same extension of that analogy, to be able to assist in a valid defense or in representing a party in a court of law. Hmm.
So, would it be right that you're saying not in the near future is AI replacing the lawyers because of the lack of emotional intelligence?
Some things I believe AI will be able to replace lawyers on, especially when it comes to, I believe, transactions. Transaction space is something where I believe lawyers could get redundant very, very quickly. All my corporate lawyer friends who rake in lakhs and lakhs of rupees for doing a couple of contracts better watch out. I honestly do believe that, again, as I said, looking at past contracts, past, if say, for example, a large amount of data is given to an AI software and it's mentioned that these were the contracts which were drawn up, these were the mistakes that were pointed out, and then these mistakes were corrected, right? And then also that, say, between a negotiation or any sort of a transaction between party A and party B, these are the common points of contention. If this kind of data is fed into the AI software, I do believe that it will be able to, within a few seconds, um, come up with a document which is, say, for example, fair to both parties, or in another situation is compliant with all the laws and regulations of the city, the state, the country that need to be ascribed to. AI can definitely help with a lot of that. Mm, disputes is something that I don't believe AI will be able to help with for at least the foreseeable future. However, I believe I also I may be having some inherent bias when I say all this, because I am a litigator myself. So maybe there is one smart cookie out there who is going to make me redundant as well. Let's see.
Talking about tech and the judicial system, what are your views about the Supreme Court streaming its proceedings live? Does it mean an increased level of transparency, or will judicial forums be misused for playing to the gallery?
Um, so there have been many people, institutions batting for live broadcasting of court proceedings for many, many years, at least a decade. It was not very, it was not something which was commonly seen, the strife for live court proceedings. And even then, the main argument was that court proceedings are not such that you want everything to be talked about in open, or everything can be aired out for the general public to see. There are some sort of constraints which need to be, the judges need to have a little bit of autonomy to deal with them. I have never agreed to that. I say that lawyers can make absurd arguments, lawyers can say the most absurd things. Judges, being in that position of authority, unbridled power to a huge extent, they need to be far more accountable and far more transparent in their dealings. It is one thing to write one thing in the order sheet, and then what is happening in the oral discussions between the judge and the counsel. It is a completely different story which has taken place. Those days have to go. live broadcast of court proceedings is a very, very beneficial thing. The arguments for not doing this, I believe, are completely irrelevant. And this is something which is, I believe, going to help to a huge extent. Having said that, playing to the galleries is always a concern, but that's not just a concern when it comes to, something like live broadcast. Playing to the galleries, I believe, is something which has been happening since the past, again, decade in any case. Ever since the time of legal journalism has started, it has been of immense benefit. But I keep seeing judges also molding their judgments, what they say in the court, in an effort to be politically correct. So that's something that, of course, transparency again paramount, but the concern of theatrics, the concern of trying to kind of garner public adoration by lawyers or by judges is something that we have to be careful about.
The same thing, live proceedings. In the USA, the Supreme Court has not yet taken the step to make their proceedings go live in a video format. They do it in an audio format. Do you think India is more advanced in that sense?
Well, honestly, I believe that a lot of data is lost if you don't have video, right? The right context.
Hmm.
Audio could be something, but if the video is there, that gives far more mm, data for the people to kind of understand what's going on. I have honestly no idea about how things transpire in the United States Supreme Court, or any other technological uh, provisions in the USA for that matter. All I know is compared to what we were, say perhaps a decade ago, there have been huge technological innovations, progress in the legal system, from online, like provision for online copies, online, uploading of orders and judgments, to the cause lists being made available online, being sent to emails of all lawyers who subscribe to them, uh, e-filing, acknowledgements being received on the internet, of course, virtual hearings taking place, something which I never thought I would see in my lifetime. And recently providing of e-copies of the entire case file, something which was launched just about, I think, 2 or 3 days back by the Delhi High Court. I think compared to what it was back in the day, I mean, not that I know much about back in the day. It's just been about a decade for me practicing law, but even compared to when I started out, or maybe perhaps around 2008 when I started with my first year of law school, since then I would say there's definitely been tremendous progress. Yeah.
Great. Um, you were just talking about legal journalism. So, what are your views on legal journalism, and do you consider yourself a legal journalist?
Um, Legal journalism is fantastic. I believe that, so a lot of lawyers, especially the older, more experienced lawyers, when I used to start out and when I was starting out and I asked them for advice on how to get better in my career, they all said, you must every day go back home and read journals, uh, you know, and and uh, and commentaries and anything else that you can lay your hands on. Now with these incredible websites, these institutions putting in huge amounts of time, effort, resources, it has been very, very helpful to lawyers, law students, and even the general public. You Google how to get bail, or principles of bail, you'll have not just Indian Qanun judgments which are a little difficult to comprehend for the general layperson. But you've also got, you know, and Verdictum for that matter, and many other uh, websites which are able to, and it's the hard work of these law journalists who are able to condense very, very technical, complicated judgments into digestible, readable, uh, you know, uh, articles or videos. So it's very, very helpful. I would say that more than content creators, it's the legal journalists who are spreading knowledge about the law in the general population. Myself, as a legal journalist, um, I wouldn't call myself a journalist. I don't talk in an impartial way. I don't do reporting. My thing is more about um, talking about my own experiences with a huge amount of bias and prejudice soaked into all the things that I talk about. So I would definitely not call myself a journalist. I would just call myself an advocate who, you know, who will talk about his experiences and who will hold strong stands on the things that he cares about. Something which journalists don't, good journalists at least, they don't do that. They
Right.
keep neutral stance. I'm not one of those.
The next and the last question was actually about the same thing that you were talking. A lawyer gets trained to present one side of the picture, right? And that too with great conviction. But journalists have to play a different role, and objectivity of opinion and viewpoint is of utmost importance. So I think you've already answered it, but I'll still ask you again. Do you think you are able to justify that difference in the court and outside of it?
So yes, as I mentioned earlier, it's the same thing that for me, it's very difficult to hold a very unbiased or just reporting facts as they transpired. I I go very, very heavy with my personal opinions on every subject matter, whatever I'm dealing with. And that's the reason why I never talk about things that I'm not personally dealing with, the cases, the challenges. I'm always talking from my own experience. It's like saying a journalist talking about only and only his personal experiences and how he views life. That would be a very, very shallow experience for the viewer or the person who's watching or reading
Hmm.
that content. Uh, so I've never really kind of thought of myself as a journalist, and it's a skill set which I believe has to be developed if you want to go into legal journalism. Um, you will have to, you'll have to detach yourself from outcomes. You will have to detach yourself from feeling for any one party. Only then will you be able to do justice to the profession of uh, being a journalist. Uh, and that is something that I have absolutely no idea how to do, to be honest.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you say that you only present the side of a lawyer, not a journalist. That is settled.
I guess.
Great. So that was all for our session today, and it was really insightful, lots of information. Thank you so much for joining us. And for more such content, keep watching Verdictum.
It's an absolute pleasure, Ananya. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much.